Hi everyone, I'm Retha, and welcome to a very important conversation, part of this special edition called Wow Juneteenth, sponsored by T-Mobile and presented by Mind Body Social.
Hi everyone, my name is Suzanne and I'm here with Retha, Lama, Shirley, and Cornell at the Open Awareness Buddhist Central in Miami for a powerful conversation about Juneteenth. But before we get started, I have one important thing we all need to do. We need to register for a chance to win gift cards, Fitbits, and other amazing pieces courtesy of T-Mobile. It's super easy and quick. We're going to do it with you. Just grab your phone, open your camera, and scan the QR code, or you can visit wowmbs.com/Juneteenth. It's really basic info and it only takes about 60 seconds. Pause the video if you need to. We'll all be right here to begin together. Now let's get started.
Hi everybody and welcome back. Wow, this is an exciting month and a lot of people are very, very curious as to what Juneteenth is. I'd like for you to take this opportunity to do two things. One, I'd like you to introduce yourself and then tell me what you know, or at least a little bit about what you know about Juneteenth. Okay, Lama.
Okay, my name is Lama Karmachutso, and I am the resident teacher or Lama of the Open Awareness Buddhist Central. So I teach Tibetan Buddhism. And as far as Juneteenth goes, I know a little bit more now than I did even a few days ago. But I'm really here to learn, and it's very exciting to have this day coming that we can commemorate something as important as finally the very last people learning about their freedom.
Exactly. Cornell.
Hello, I'm Cornell Crews Jr. I'm the Executive Director for the Community Reinvestment Alliance of South Florida. And Juneteenth is a very important day to me as it recognizes the day that slaves in Texas were finally emancipated 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. We finally learned that they were actually free. It's an important day that we must commemorate and must celebrate every chance we get.
Mm-hmm.
Good morning, my name is Shirley Ellison. I am the Vice Chair of the Black Heritage Planning Committee. And for me, Juneteenth is a day that most Black Americans should never forget because it's a day of celebration and it's a day that they commemorate the abolishment of slavery. But on the other hand, most white Americans, due to the recent uprise of the brutality that's going on, they've given them a different prospect as to what Juneteenth is really about. So it's a day that we should never, ever forget, you know.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Jewell, the Mindful Entrepreneur, and I'm a mindfulness meditation teacher. I, not unlike Lama, have a growing awareness of what it is that Juneteenth actually is all about. I do sit in a couple of groups that are specific to addressing anti-racism and whiteness and trying to understand better what it is that as a white ally we don't know, and there's a lot that I don't know, and so that's one of the reasons I'm here too.
Thanks, Suzanne, for that. I didn't introduce myself. My name is Retha Boone-Fye, and I'm actually the director for the Black Affairs Advisory Board. I have been recently become more knowledgeable about Juneteenth. I remember a couple of years ago when Shirley came and they had a celebration, and I'm like, what is this? What do you mean Juneteenth? I've never heard of this. It's been some years ago, but then I started delving into the history and found out that as of the 1st of January 1863, when the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, a lot of the states who were bound to the Confederacy refused to acknowledge it, and that was one of the reasons why they kept that knowledge from the slaves in Texas, so that when General Grange, I believe it was, landed in Texas and told them that they were free on the 19th of June, hence the beginning Juneteenth. So what tends to happen is we're all learning this together, as a matter of fact. And so we thought we'd get together and talk about racial reconciliation centered around Juneteenth. You're learning, we're all learning together. So give me your thoughts on how you feel that this whole process is making its way through this entire culture, through the American culture. So anybody, just kind of open up, okay?
It opened my eyes a lot. Growing up in Hartford, Connecticut, I didn't really, and I know it was racism all over everywhere, but growing up in Hartford, Connecticut, I didn't see it like it was seen down here in the South, because like I say, my white counterparts and black, we used to be in each other's house. They spend the night at my house, I spend the night at their house, and we didn't look at it like that. I was the only black girl in my graduation class and two black boys in 1960. But when I came down south, and my dad is from South Carolina, mom from North Carolina, but when I came down south, I really saw the difference in how, you know, blacks were being treated and things that they couldn't do. And I'm saying, oh, you mean they couldn't go here? They couldn't do that? I knew nothing about that. So it opened up my eyes an awful lot.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that what is changing is how we look at race, and I think one of the things I wish that we would stop saying, and I've seen it a lot in the media, is some people, especially people who are not people of color, love to say, well, I don't see color. Of course you do.
We all
just like you see brown eyes, and you see a big nose, or you see a bald head. You notice it. I don't want you to stop noticing color. I want you to stop using it as a weapon. That's where I think we have to draw the line. I think as we look back on Juneteenth and we see how blacks were treated based on if the general hadn't got there and Galveston after 2 years, it went on 3 years, 4 years, 10 years, and it kept going because the slaves had no way of read. They weren't allowed to read. It was against the law to read, so they would have never known that they were actually free. So I think as we try to tie Juneteenth to today, I think we got to recognize that we had issues in this country. We have to know the history of our country, and we have to be able to deal with this any type of relationship you're in. In order to fix it, you got to know what you did wrong.
Recognize
right?
it, exactly.
That's the only way you can fix it. If we continue to perpetuate, oh no, I don't see color, or no, I don't, that's in the past. Let's let it go. I know you didn't do it. I know it wasn't you. But you got to recognize that what your ancestors did. You got to recognize some of the issues that we still have today in this country based on policies.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things for me is this split of you have your ancestors and I have mine. Well, they're all my ancestors. They're all your ancestors. You know, in our tradition we talk about karma, past lives and future lives. You know, we've all been everything. And even in this lifetime, we can say to ourselves that these are my ancestors too.
We talk too about generational trauma and how that has impacted not just us, but everybody. There's always some in your background in the generations of things that carry on. And so I think it's important, as the Lama says, that we recognize it, and that and one of the things, you cannot fix something if you don't recognize it and acknowledge it. And I think that these type conversations are happening not just here, but hopefully throughout the United States and actually throughout the world, to acknowledge it, and let's try to move past it. I know, Suzanne, you and I have really, really bonded, especially over mindfulness. And one of the things that we talked about was the fact that this generational trauma and the trauma that our ancestors went through, we basically have inculcated within ourselves. So we have to understand that in order to heal, you must first acknowledge and then let go. Because hatred is like drinking poison and hoping that it kills somebody else, because we cannot internalize that. So what are your thoughts?
It's so important we're having this conversation first and foremost. In my path of becoming a mindfulness practitioner and our bond and the honor to work with Lama here, there's a real issue around one of the first proponents of mindfulness is awareness. It's waking up, seeing what's really here, not running and numbing, but sitting and staying. And that's a brave choice. And one of the other parts of mindfulness is the two wings, which are wisdom and compassion. So coming to a great space of suffering, which is what slavery has inculcated intergenerationally, as you said, into the cells of your tissues. And anyone who's had a trauma in their family also potentially could have that. But science is now actually meeting up with these ancient pieces of wisdom and practice and recognizing that the research that has been done was first and foremost on people who were descendants of those who had been in the Holocaust. And whether or not someone had actually been in a camp or just in the Warsaw Ghetto experiencing hunger, because cortisol is the stress hormone and it goes into the eggs of a woman, and women have those eggs their whole lives from when they're young to have children to their age moves on. Any of those descendants that experience the cortisol increase of hunger or slavery from the mom gets carried on into the actual offspring of whatever it is that that woman experienced. There's also research that even at the level of putting a cat in a cage with mice, not letting the cat kill the mice, but letting the mice get extremely stressed out, adrenaline. Then generations later, putting a hair from that cat in the cage of the offspring, the response is as if the cat was actually there. So the elements of mindfulness that I think are for my learning and my journey, helping inform me to try to be a good ally and try to be present in your pain and suffering, is first of all to let it be revealed so that it can be healed, and also be courageous enough to recognize that I have not walked in your moccasins, and it is on my karma to have a big enough spacious heart to meet it with compassion. And when you have the courage to be compassionate and come from the heart, and not honestly even the history or the head, but from the heart, to realize another living being experienced this, I think it begins to offer the opportunity for us to start putting some of that healing to.
Exactly. I know that you and I had talked about some of the things that we went through and some of the things. So when I found out about mindfulness, I was like, what is this? I don't have time for this stuff. And then I encountered Miami's traffic one morning. A friend of mine introduced me to mindfulness, and I'm driving down the street, and the first thing I thought was some of the lessons that I learned in mindfulness essentials and basics were how to deal with traumatic situations immediately, how to know that what those things are that trigger you. So I'm driving down the street. Typically, someone cuts in front of me or, does something to me. And the lesson that I had just learned that previous night was, why are you going to allow that to dictate the rest of your day? Pretty much like with mindfulness, how are you going to allow that whole trauma situation to dictate the way you live for the rest of your life? So it's incumbent upon us to basically be the person that we're meant to be, and also to be that honest with ourselves to know, yes, my ancestors went through that. Yes, it was terrible, but what am I going to do moving forward? Are we going to have these conversations where we know that from a reconciliation standpoint, it has to happen? It's not going to change overnight, but if the change begins internally, then we can begin to start making progress.
Yeah, definitely. And I watched, because I go to Peru a lot, I watched them go through a reconciliation time from the time when they had the Shining Path guerrillas, and so many people were killed either by them or by the government's army and things. And one of my friends dealt with that in a very interesting way. Okay. So she made a huge, it must have been at least 150 feet across, labyrinth. And the paths of the labyrinth were delineated by these troughs. And in the trough, you would see small stones. They were about this big. And every single stone had a name on it of someone who had passed away during that time. Sorry.
Yeah.
And so it was this really extraordinary commemorative piece of art that everyone could come and walk, and people would come, indigenous people would come, and they would find a name, and they would put the photograph of that person there. And you have to understand, they wiped out villages. They wiped out entire families so that you didn't, they weren't there. So thinking of that, I thought there is a spiritual way, I think, that we can help to reconcile here, right here, and soon. And that would be if everyone, any black person in Miami-Dade County or anywhere, could bring a list or even one name just written down on a piece of paper. And what we would do is we would put it into our fire pit. And then I will do this particular practice, which is a practice of liberating the spiritual, the consciousness, liberating pain, basically. And then we would just burn all of the names.
Wow, that's powerful. If we and in particular, we also need to look at that from a standpoint of helping to stem this gun violence. And some of the young people who have lost friends, relatives, mothers, fathers, uncles, brothers, family, to alleviate that. Thank you for touching us with that suggestion and that pledge, because we have all of these things that we have basically swallowed, for lack of a better word, that we need to get out, that we need to release. And that would be an awesome way to release the release of the pain.
Release of that, and spiritually, it's a release for not just our consciousnesses, but the consciousnesses of all of those people. Every name.
We've gone. Wow. I'm speechless, and that's not usual for me. Just
I would add something to that. I would love to make that open to anyone and everyone. And not just the black diaspora, but open it up to anyone and everyone, because I think there's traumas that suffered on both sides. The one side of I think for black people is all the stuff they suffered, and some things that continue to happen, that continue to keep us on this path, and we're not being able to release and get off this path. But I also think that the other side their time would be invested wisely in that as well, because they take a lot of the blame. We put the blame on them, and we do, especially the things that keep perpetuating over and over and over again in a lot of different areas, from health to housing to the simple purchase of buying a car and how we're treated differently, to the simple purchase of going to a restaurant and how we're treated differently. So all those things that I think that are important to being able to put that stuff in that pit, burn it, and come out and try to come out cleansed, and so that we can think better and start from a place of we're all people, we're all human beings, because it's hard for me to have a conversation with someone over racism or Juneteenth or all the issues that we have if we start from a place of you think I'm less than you.
Then exactly.
It's hard for me to have to start from there.
Yes.
That's hard to have a conversation for me. Very, very difficult. I'm already tense.
Yeah.
My chest is already swollen. I'm already got that look on my face where my brow is furrowed. I'm already there.
Yeah.
Simply based on the fact that because you think that I'm less than. So I think, and you know what? I think if I would put the thing that I wouldn't put a name on that piece of paper.
What would you do?
I would put on there, please think of me as a whole human being. And then I would put that in the fire, so that everyone, I want everyone to think of everyone else as a whole human being. My mom always said, even through, and they were in the midst of racism, and I saw it. Yeah. My mom always said, treat everyone as an individual, everybody, no matter what their race, creed, or color is. And I've tried to live by that throughout my whole life.
Exactly.
Great. So everyone.
Yeah.
Let's open it up to everyone.
Asians,
everyone.
Blacks, whites, everyone who has been harmed, everyone who needs to release the pain.
Because those folks suffered the PTSD of me blaming, and I say me, I mean all of us, blaming them
for what happened.
And they actually get upset. Well, because one of the first things you hear is, "Well, I didn't do it. My ancestors did it." Okay. As Suzanne just explained to us, how it's passed down generation to generation to generation to generation. We still have things today that happened that's still going on from the 50s. I love to say I don't love to say it, but I have to say it all the time, is that what really irks me is that I'm still fighting the fights my grandmother fought.
Yeah.
Still fighting
Yeah.
those same fights. Here we are in 2021, and sure, things have gotten better. I will
Right.
admit that things have gotten better.
Right.
But at the same time, I'm still thought of as being down here, while certain people are thought of as being up here.
And so what tends to happen is we get caught up in the past and live it now.
Yeah.
So internally, though, we have to find a way to reconcile within ourselves so that that anger does not manifest itself in high blood pressure, in anger, and stress, and those kinds of things. And that's where mindfulness comes in, with the reconciliation within the self. Not just the fact that we all go through that. You know, you walk into a room and you're uncomfortable for whatever reason. And so mindfulness, to me, has been something that has really brought the stress level down. I see myself in situations now that I ordinarily would be, tense, like you say. My chest is swollen, my pressure's up. But when I look at it from a mindful standpoint, I look at that person and I say to myself, they may be going through some guilt for whatever reason. They may have had a rough day. Someone cuts me off in traffic. They may be on their way to a position and have been told, if you're late one more time, you're going to be fired. So I let them go, and I don't let that bother me and stress me out for the rest of my day or the rest of my life.
And what's so important that you're saying about that, Retha, is that mindfulness, which comes from the ancient practice of Buddhism, the Satipatthana Sutta, is its origins, 2,600 years old. Again, the science is meeting this issue of what we're calling destructive emotions. So rage, anger, hostility, desire, craving, aversion, these are all areas that when you begin a practice, rather than looking to the outward causes and conditions, you actually look inwardly to determine, this is the stimulus, here is my response, and my space, which Viktor Frankl has shown us, in between is where my freedom lies. And Viktor Frankl taught us, as a Holocaust survivor, that while he was watching people walk past him going to the gas chambers, he realized that the terror the Nazis wanted to create in his momentary experience was to be afraid to death. But he recognized, but wait a minute, I'm actually still alive. So something that would be kind of akin to pure awareness dawned on him, and he had an awakening that, wait a minute, this is the stimulus, which is complete terror and fear for my very own life. This is my opportunity to respond or react, and in between that space is where my freedom lies. And he chose to ascertain and embody his freedom, so he chose to remove himself from the fear by having that awareness of looking at what it was there for. Because the issue about destructive emotions too, like the poison analogy you gave, is they're very sticky. They're extremely heavy. They stick to us and they don't move through us. That's why this little river that's right here is a great teacher, how to let it move through you and not stick to you. And we are the ones who suffer when we hold the anger and the rage, whether it's the trauma, the guilt, the shame, the blame, or whatever did actually happen. So I think, hopefully, I'm not too naive to say this, that part of George Floyd's incident of his death, having so many people in this country watch a man lose his life, has begun to, again, I think, moving below the head into the heart, helping people start to wake up and recognize this is not acceptable in this place that I call my country. Yes. That this is not what we actually, at least embodied in a constitution, what it is that's at the bottom of the Statue of Liberty by Ezra Pound, give us your weak and your weary. And I really do believe we're at a time where we have to call upon the better angels of our nature.
I definitely believe that. And I also would like to engage people to make them realize, like you were saying, that anger that you have and that feeling that maybe they look at me as a lesser person, don't accept it.
Yeah.
Don't accept it. I don't care what you think about me. That's what I learned throughout
Right.
this whole process.
Don't take it on,
does.
yeah.
I don't take it. If you think that I'm less than you are, then that's your problem, not mine.
Exactly.
I'm moving on.
What you think about me is not my business.
Exactly.
It's
Yeah,
yours.
it's yours.
But
It's
you know
your
what? Though,
business.
I think that's a lot of the cause of so much violence that we're seeing now is that, just like you just said, we take it on. So you take it on, you internalize it. Now you feel like you have to go and do something about it. So as Suzanne has been teaching me lately is how to release that in another way. How to not take that on and not be able and not use it as a crutch to go and commit violence or to hurt someone else because you feel hurt or you feel disrespected. How do we I think the mindfulness and meditation will definitely help that. I was telling Suzanne when we first met, you know, and she actually knows the people who put the practice and put the program into practice. I was reading an article a few years ago about how one of the school systems up north had taken the kids, elementary school kids, instead of putting them in detention, put them in meditation, and how the behavior changed. Just for meditation.
Exactly.
And we know, especially in a state like this, where our thing is the schoolyard to prison pipeline.
Yeah.
Prisons are built on how African Americans or the Black diaspora act. They start tracking them from the 4th grade. So how they act from then on, how many times they're disciplined, how many times they go into detention, how many times they're expelled. That's how we decide how the prisons
path.
are. So let's start young. Let's start with the meditation practice of, okay, there's another way that you can react instead of reacting violently and using because I think about the times that I've been in situations where I either reacted violently or I got really, really upset, i.e. in traffic, got really, really upset, and how it affected your whole day.
The whole day.
The whole day is gone.
Yeah. And you're still mad.
It was 8:30. It's still 1 o'clock, and you're still thinking about the guy who cut me off. Ugh. Really?
Yeah.
So now 6 hours. Now it turns into 8 hours. Now you're on the way back home again.
And somebody does it again.
Somebody does it again.
And you get made.
And you're right back where you started. Now you get home. Now
Exactly.
you're tense with your family.
Yes.
You're tense with any relationships that you have.
Yes.
All that is tenseness instead of
Yes.
let's find a new way. And the new way is mindfulness, I think. I think that's the new way.
Yeah.
One
like
thing
to
we
point
have
out
to stop
also
blaming the South for so much, is going on. Because little as we know, New York City had the most slaves. They had 22,000 slaves. And New Jersey was right after them with 12,000 slaves. And although Philadelphia was the first state that, freed the slaves, we have to stop putting so much emphasis that the South did it all and the South is not. The North had a lot to do with it.
Well, the North
Yes.
made a lot of money off the South because
exactly.
cotton was grown in the South.
Exactly.
And all the
That's
factories were in the North.
Exactly.
So they
So-
perpetuated the cycle.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
so-
one of the things is also that when we talk about mindfulness and how really beneficial it is for all of us, we have to understand that all of that came from people of color.
Exactly. You
It
know,
all, it all came from Asia.
and that
most
and
of
that
it,
yeah,
except
and
for
that
Frankel.
and that gives us pause now to give an example of mindfulness and how that mindfulness works. So I'm going to invite Suzanne, who is my shiro, to do a mindful practice with us.
So I'm going to invite everybody to do what is called take a dignified seat. And you can kind of see I sort of sat with a more noble, regal way. And I bow that because of this beautiful statue behind us. The words of the Buddha spoke about each one of us, our sons and daughters of the awakened ones. So when you meet yourself in a moment of mindfulness, be dignified and noble. Let your back be strong and your front be soft. If it's available to you, you can close your eyes. If not, just let your eyes go downcast and soften your gaze. And let's just collect our attention for a moment or two away from maybe all the talking and the movement of our mouths, and allow ourselves to become very present and aware of the seat upon which we find ourselves here in a circle of compassion today. Bringing attention and awareness also to where our feet touch this earth. We are on sacred ground here at the Open Awareness Buddhist Center, and likely also on sacred territory of the Tequesta, so naming heritage. And I'm going to invite us to put our hand on our heart. And today I'm going to encourage us to contemplate for a quiet moment the South African 30,000-year-old philosophy of Ubuntu, put forward in our modern-day world by Nelson Mandela. I am a person because of other people. When this is practiced and you ask someone, "How are you?" they respond from their whole clan. If grandma's not well, the response is, "We are not well." I am because you are. Even the mirror neurons in our mind show that we are wired for empathy together. So may we not build more bad othering barriers between us. Let us do what has not been done for thousands of years and find a way to actually walk, talk, engage in the middle way, which is a way of peace. A way of loving kindness. And a way of awareness of the wellness and the merit and the value of all. Pressing our palms together in prayer pose, letting our thumbs touch the heart space. And just dropping our heads for a moment toward the heart. Grateful for a moment to share space and compassion, courage and learning. Rubbing our hands together. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Just that brief mindful session just kind of dropped the level of stress. So you can just imagine how this practice would do. And I have the funniest thing. I practice my mindfulness every single morning in the shower. I like to take like a little, I like an orange spice, and I just rub it together and I do this. And it just brings me down. And I start thinking about all the things I got to do today, blah, 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 blah. But by the same token, it's like it just brings that level down. And so these are some of the things that we want to invite. And we really should start early, like Cornell says, with the kids. Start them really early. So with that in mind, I think that reconciliation, mindfulness has a true purpose. And it's something that we had talked about exploring. We had talked about doing some sessions on that, and so you and I are going to follow up with doing that. I would like to take this opportunity to thank T-Mobile, Baptist Health, Mind Body Social for this opportunity to bring this very enlightening conversation to you. I deeply appreciate all of you taking time out from your busy schedules to do this, and in particular, I want to thank the spirits that have just gathered for this particular time and for us to be able to witness it and do those things. I know that we wanted to invite the Lama to do a silent meditation. This is your specialty.
Yes.
And so I am going to, at this point, turn it over to you, and we're going to do a silent meditation. And we'll be thanking, again, T-Mobile, Baptist Health, and Mind Body Social. Okay.
So for this meditation, again, you can take your posture. And first, let your attention settle on the sound of the gong. And when that sound dies away, just gently settle your attention on the air that moves in and out of your body, and let everything else go. If a thought arises, let it go. If you hear something and it causes a reaction, let it go. And we'll just sit quietly and see what's really happening in our minds.
Thank you, Lama. That was just perfect. Again, I'd like to thank T-Mobile, Baptist Health, Mind Body Social for this opportunity. Thank everyone for being here. I deeply appreciate it. I think we have started a new road, and I think one that we should all begin to travel. Yes. Thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Namaste.
Okay.